Welcome to IDERA Virtual Education. In this video we're going to talk about deploying SQL Safe into an environment leveraging always-on high availability. In this particular example we have a two-node always-on availability group. The two servers involved would be eval AG1 and eval AG2, one being the primary, two being the secondary. A couple databases associated to that availability group. Now, the first step that you're going to need to do when deploying to any SQL Server is to inform SQL Safe basically where that SQL Server is, or what SQL servers do we need to back up. It's relatively easy to do. You would say register new SQL Server. You could type in the name, so we'll type in eval AG1, and then we'll type in eval AG2. And then if you have cross-domain environments where it may be necessary to leverage something like a SQL authentication account besides a Windows authentication account, you could certainly specify that. In this case, we're all within the same domain, so it's relatively simple. So now that we've told SQL Safe about the two nodes that eventually will have backups run on them, we need to deploy the agents. Now, it's relatively simple. If you right-click on a particular SQL server, it'll give you the ability to deploy the backup agent. But before you do that, it may be wise to go under Management Console Preferences and explain to SQL Safe which account you want that backup service to run as. So under Agent Deployment, you'll have the ability to specify a domain account that you would like that specific agent to run as, so that you don't actually have to go out to the server and make a modification. So the first thing we'll do is we'll deploy the agent to the first node. So I right-click. It'll then prompt me, what type of deployment do we want to do? Do you want to deploy the agent as well as the extensor procedures that would give you the ability to script out in a T-SQL fashion backup and restore operations? So if you're on the fence on whether or not you want to deploy the extensor procedures, you don't have to. You can push those out remotely as well after the fact. But generally speaking, I think most of our users, and I would recommend that you go ahead and deploy those extensor procedures if it's at all possible, because it adds some extra functionality into the tool. So we'll say OK. And then this will go out to the environment. It's discovered that it's a cluster, so it's indicating that we're going to be installing on the active node. It's basically letting me know that there's other servers associated to this cluster that I'll need to do a secondary install on. So we need to install the binaries or the agent itself on each node that makes up the AG. If you were talking about a failover cluster, same concept would apply. So the first part of the story is done, right? So we've informed SQL Safe and put that agent out there on AG1, and now we're going to do the exact same thing on AG2. So we're going to install the Safe agent, say OK. It will also discover that this is part of a cluster. It's just letting me know, again, there's multiple servers here that we need to have those binaries deployed out to. Once this is finished, you have a couple different things that you could do with these agents. So at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you'll notice an area called SQL Safe Agents. When you select that, you'll now see all the different servers where agents have been deployed. If you select all servers, one thing to be conscious of, the agents respond back generally to a central server. In my case, the server that we're on right now is called eval SQL 1. That's where the management service for SQL Safe is. When I talk about the management service, there's a Windows service that's kind of the broker of communication for the SQL Safe application. So when a backup occurs, the backup service or the agent that in this case maybe on eval AG2, because that's the secondary, would be responding back with its information about how long the backup's taking, where the file's located, the compression ratios, all to what we would call the SQL Safe Management Service. So it's pretty important for those agents to all be talking to the same centralized location. If they're not, you can go into an agent and you can modify the server that it's responding to. You can also explain to the agent how many backups or restore operations it can do simultaneously. The default would be 3, so it can do 3 simultaneous backups, 3 simultaneous restores, but often you may want to make an adjustment there. So if you have very, very large databases, 3 is appropriate, because some databases might take a very long time, where you have some smaller databases in there that could get done relatively quickly. In other environments you might run 20, in other environments you might run 1. So it's somewhat dependent on your hardware that you're running with, but generally speaking 3 is relatively normal. So once the agent's been deployed, you're good to go. You can do manual backups, you can do scheduled backups, and we'll cover those in future videos. So that's how you would go ahead and deploy agents to an environment that's leveraging always on. Thank you very much.